comes in, then she'll step down. Okay.
We have one more, President. Janet Davis, come on down.
You sit with me, like it or not. Me?
Lucky you.
He usually comes a little late. So he does come in, he can just step down. But to open the meeting, we'll have you. Thanks. Okay.
Wait right here. Planning Commission, January 12, 2023, is now come to order. Tonight's invocation will be led by Commissioner Walker, and the pledge will be led by Commissioner Stafford. Please join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, please bow. Heavenly Father, guide us in our discussions this evening. Enlighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace and that we may effectively do our part as public servants. Let us always remember to give you the glory for everything that is accomplished in our community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Again, for those of you that might have come in a little bit later, if you intend to speak on an item, please make sure that you do sign up at the back of the room. All right, to go ahead and continue on. Mr. Starter, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Remick,
Here.
Janet,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
Stafford,
Here.
Gerke, Greenway,
Here.
Scott, Lamond,
here.
Davis,
Here.
Walker,
Here.
Hobby.
Present, thank you. May I have a motion to approve last month's minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda? Or, I'm sorry, tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The first item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. Items placed in this section are applicable, which demonstrates, applications which demonstrates compliance with city applicable requirements. These items shall not be involved in discussion by the Planning Commission and/or the public. The consent agenda will be voted on in one motion. However, if any two commissioners so desire, individual items may be discussed and/or voted upon in separate matters of business. May I have a motion for approval of tonight's consent agenda with staff findings and recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Director Selman, will you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Thank you. Is this working?
I'm not sure. I know I hear myself.
They're on.
Go on.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, thank you. The subject property owned by Giles Limited Partnership is an existing warehouse building on 1.73 acres at 112 Bluestone Court. The applicant, Ms. Margaret Demashiro, seeks an Article 2 large-scale site plan approval to redevelop the existing structure into a space for a gymnastic program. The proposed use is permitted in the subject property zoning. It's classified as a Type A occupancy according to the building code, and that is the reason it is on your agenda tonight. The subject is zoned M1 light manufacturing, has a future land use classification of industrial, and is located in Board of Directors District Number 1. The recommendation is approval. because the application meets the requirements of Hot Springs Code 16422 and 16257, 162 and 1695G1. The recommendation for approval carries 6 conditions, and I'll read those conditions into the record. All construction and construction activity is to be accomplished in strict accordance with the approved site plan and all approval conditions, and with the minimum standards, codes, rules, regulations, and policies as may now or hereafter be required or enacted by the City of Hot Springs, the State of Arkansas, and/or the United States of America, including the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, whether or not submitted for staff review or Planning Commission approval. Number 2, a certificate of occupancy for the structure shall be in hand prior to any use of the property. Number 3, separate permit application shall be made by the applicant to Hot Springs Engineering Department, and permits shall be in hand for stormwater, drainage, and sidewalks as may be required prior to any work beginning. Number 4, a separate sign permit application, review, approval, and permit shall be required prior to installation of any signs. Number 5, any additional lighting must be fully downcast, full cutoff, and shielded, containing all illumination on the subject property. Number 6, multiple building or large-scale site plans approved by the Planning Commission shall be effective for 1 year from the date, January 12, 2023, of approval, being valid through January 12, 2024. Prior to its expiration date, the Director of Planning and Development may extend the original site plan approval for up to 2 one-year periods upon the applicant's written request. Planning Commission approval of any project that has not fully secured all required permits within the period of time set forth shall be null and void. That concludes the item.
Thank you, Director. For all those that are in favor of the consent agenda, please vote in the favor of aye. Those the same sign. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The item has been approved. Thank you. Director Erickson is recusing herself from the next item on tonight's agenda, which is new business, item number 2. There will be an opportunity for the applicant and for the public to provide testimony. Director Selman, would you please introduce item number 2?
Thank you. Item number 2 is SPA 22396, Reunion Hall Theater, a large-scale development site plan review, application for assembly occupancy, use to operate a theater in the historic high school auditorium.
Thank you, Director. A motion to approve merely gets the matter on the floor for discussion. A motion to approve and second does not mean that you're necessarily in favor of this particular application. May I have a motion to approve item number 2 with the staff findings and conditions?
So move.
Seconded.
Thank you. Planning Commissioners, please do hold your questions until everybody has presented. Director Selman, please present the staff report on item number 2.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Item number 2, the subject property is a former school, now known as Hot Springs High School Lofts at 125 Oak Street. The applicant, Mr. Rico Harris with Harris Architecture, representing the owner, Mr. Charles Schroeder, seeks Article 2 large-scale site plan approval to redevelop the existing auditorium space within and adding public restrooms to the high school building. No exterior modification is proposed. The proposed use is permitted in C1 Central Business District zoning and is classified as Group A assembly occupancy according to the building code. The subject has a future land use classification of institutional and is located in Board of Directors District Number 1. The Hot Springs High School Lofts includes 32 residences and this pre-existing assembly space. Again, this is a request to redevelop and improve the auditorium without changing the existing building footprint. This is a 4-story building with approximately 66,000 square feet. Hot Springs Code states in section 16421B, large-scale development projects include all Group A assembly occupancies unless they have an occupant load less than or equal to 50. The proposed theater use is a type A and triggers this review to Planning Commission. Hot Springs Code section 16422 details the Article 2 submittal requirements. The location currently has 2 vehicular access points, one from Oak Street and one from Orange Street. No change is proposed to vehicular access. Off-street parking is not required in C1 zoning per Hot Springs Code section 16251. However, the applicant does demonstrate parking agreements for meeting anticipated parking needs. The property is zoned C1, adjacent to all property boundaries. There is some R4 residential zoning to the south across Orange Street. Because of the arrangement of zones around the subject property, additional site perimeter treatment or buffering is not required. No additional landscaping is required according to Hot Springs Code 16994A because no new parking spaces are proposed on the site. The existing building footprint is demonstrated on the site plan and illustrates that no new structures are proposed outside the existing building. Existing parking is demonstrated on the site plan. No additional parking is proposed as there is no off-street parking requirement in the C1 zone district. A 500 to 550 seat theater, however, can be expected to generate a parking demand in the surrounding area. Similar assembly uses are required to provide 1 space per 4 seats. The applicant has provided shared parking agreements with Hot Springs Manor for 40 spaces and with Central Baptist Church for access to 77 spaces. Hot Springs Code section 16422F states the submittal shall include in writing and accompanying any information any known or perceived negative or adverse impacts that the proposed project may impose on adjacent or nearby properties. While the applicant discloses no known or perceived negative or adverse impacts, the proposal does not provide metrics as to possible noise levels directly adjacent to the existing residential units, nor does the applicant define specific days or hours for performances. The types of musical or other performances are neither defined nor limited by the application. However, Hot Springs Code 16422F asks for perceived negative or adverse impacts that the proposed project may impose on adjacent or nearby properties. From the adjacent perspective, we can reasonably anticipate some noise and parking impacts on both loft residents and nearby neighborhoods. Acknowledging that C1 does not require parking fails to address the matter of negative impact on the surroundings. The applicant has provided nearby off-site parking arrangements by agreement with the 2 properties that I mentioned. Exhibit A identifies the private parking adjacent to the facility, totaling approximately 117 spaces for which he has agreements. The application states that the number of seats will vary depending on the seat size chosen by the owner, but the total number is not expected to exceed 550. The finding is, regarding this application, the Article 2 large-scale site plan submittal requirements in Hot Springs Code 16422 have been met. The submitted documents successfully demonstrate that all individual elements of review comply, and that with conditions, the project can be implemented. No variances or waivers are requested. The proposed theater program is a permitted use in C1, Central Business District, according to the table of permitted uses found in Hot Springs Code, Section 16-152. The recommendation is to approve with conditions. And there are 12 conditions, and we will read those into the code. Because with the recommended conditions, the application demonstrates compliance with Hot Springs Code, Section 16-422 and Section 16-251, and all other applicable City of Hot Springs codes. Number 1, all construction and construction activity is to be accomplished in strict accordance with the approved site plan and all approval conditions, and with the minimum codes, standards, rules, regulations, and policies as may now or hereafter be required or enacted by the City of Hot Springs, the State of Arkansas, and/or the United States of America, including the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, whether or not submitted for staff review or Planning Commission approval. Number 2, certificate of occupancy for the structure shall be in hand prior to the opening of the proposed use at the auditorium. Number 3, separate permit application shall be made by the applicant to the Hot Springs Planning and Development Department for additional signs. Number 4, Hot Springs Fire Department requires the following to be in place and to pass final inspection before a certificate of occupancy will be issued. Those items are a sprinkler system, a standpipe system, fire alarm system, occupant notification is required with that system, and an exterior means of egress is required. Number 5, should the lot be restriped in the future, ADA parking requirements shall be met to the fullest extent possible. Number 6, interior and exterior circulation at 125 Oak Street shall be so designed to mitigate negative impacts on residents and shall be subject to city approval prior to building permit issuance. Number 7, noise mitigation strategies to eliminate or reduce noise at its source, prepared by a qualified acoustical professional to protect adjacent and nearby properties, shall be designed and submitted for City of Hot Springs approval prior to building permit issuance. Implementation and continued maintenance of noise mitigation features shall be a continuing condition of approval. Number 8, every effort shall be made to minimize negative parking impacts upon adjacent and nearby properties. Number 9, maintain and implement shared parking agreements as illustrated in Exhibit A with Central Baptist Church and Springs Manor with the adjacent properties. Number 10, performances shall be limited as indicated in the application to the hours of 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Number 11, equipment loading and unloading shall be from the auditorium back entrance, not through the Oak Street entrance, and shall not block fire or other emergency ingress or egress. And number 12, rehearsal activity shall minimize amplified sounds so as not to create a nuisance for loft and other neighbors. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Director. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address? Is there anything that you would like to add to the record? And you have a maximum of 5 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'm Rico Harris, Harris Architecture, 1401 Malvern. We're excited about the project. It's the old high school auditorium and the old Hot Springs High building. I actually worked on that project when it became apartments 100 years ago, and we at the time we didn't have money to put towards the theater. Fortunately, that theater is concrete. It's a bunker. It just needs finishes and systems. But we appreciate your consideration of it, and we hope you approve it. Thank you.
Do we have, commissioners? Do we have anybody signed up to speak? Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, let me ask one question.
Oh, of course.
I'm not real familiar with the building, didn't go to school there or anything, but if you're adding to the auditorium, you're not taking away from the apartments, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
They're working completely within the envelope of the existing auditorium.
How are you going to make the practice time audio quiet? Who says what quiet is anyway?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's subjective. So the plan is to, like any theater, we're going to install a lot of acoustic treatments to the walls to control reverb and echo, and it will also help contain the sound within the space. And drapes, like you'd see in a movie theater, that type of system. And like I said, the building itself, the walls are concrete and plaster. And that's really, if I'm trying to soundproof a wall in a project, if I can get masonry in the budget, that's what I do. And that stops sound better than anything. So we feel good about it. We're going to be able to contain it within that envelope pretty well.
Okay.
Please, commissioners, any other questions that you might have for the applicant?
The only other question, what about the influence of people coming in and out at different stages?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually that's something that the planning department prompted us to explore. And we've got a plan. I think it's in the packet, but we have a plan to control with security personnel to control the inflow and outflow of the public during performances, and they're set up at strategic points from the main entry into the theater and back out.
So the residents would never be affected?
No, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you for canvassing the people around your project. That's something that frequently is not done, and it helps a great deal to see these comments.
Well, there again, and I'm trying to grease the wheel here, I guess, but the department really prompted us to do that too. So we did. And actually, my owner and Tom Wilkins, who's here too, he's the building manager. They had a lot of verbal approval. They had already kind of done that and got people on board and excited about it. But what the department encouraged us to do is get those things in writing. So yeah, it was a good thing.
I went to junior high there when it was the junior high.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. So
That's
I'm
neat.
very familiar with the auditorium and
Yeah,
its liveliness.
yeah. It's a great old building. I love it. Yeah.
Commissioners, any other questions for our applicant? Mr. Rico, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we can discuss amongst ourselves and take action. Any questions, concerns, comments that you would like to bring up?
I think 6:30 to 9:30 is a little constrictive for theater, but that's just me.
That is what the applicant requested.
I know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, well, at this time, we'll go ahead and proceed and we'll take action on this particular project. Just to clarify, I want to thank everybody for participating, but the motion is to approve item 2 with staff findings and conditions. So at this point, Mr. Starter, will you please call the roll?
Janet,
Yes.
Stafford,
Yes.
Greenway,
Yes.
Lamond,
Approved.
Davis,
Yes.
Walker,
Approve.
Ramick,
Yes.
Hobby.
Approved, thank you very much. Commissioner Stafford, do you mind grabbing Commissioner Erickson? Thank you. Welcome back. Director Selman, at this time, will you introduce item number 3, please?
Thank you. Item number 3 is rezone application 22413, a rezone request for property to be zoned C4 from a split zoned property currently zoned C4 and R3 located at the corner of Weston and Airport Roads.
Thank you very much, Director. A motion to approve, again, merely just gets the matter on the floor for discussion. A motion to approve and second does not mean that you're necessarily in favor of this particular application. May I have a motion to approve item number 3 with staff findings?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Director Selman, will you please present staff report on item number 3?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Item number 3, applicant is Mr. Adnan Dervesh, representing property owner Airport Road Express LLC. He is seeking C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District zoning for an approximately .36 acre of land located at the intersection of Airport Road and Weston Road. The subject property is currently split zoned with C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District along the highway at the corner of Weston Road, and R3 at the very back of the property. The property has future land use classifications of linear commercial corridor and residential medium high. It's located in Board of Directors District Number 3. The commercial zoning occupies approximately the front 3/4 of the property, with the residential section, the subject of tonight's application, being approximately the rear 1/4 of the property. The residentially zoned portion of property under rezone consideration is approximately 1/3 of an acre and is steeply sloped. The site has an approximate elevation change of approximately 43 feet from front to back of property. This request seeks to designate the entire parcel C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District. The application site plan, which is not the subject of tonight's decision, shows, however, the owner's proposed land use for this property, and it also shows surrounding land uses. Any non-residential development on the subject property would be required to provide land use buffers and screening along the northern portion of the site where it is adjacent to residential zoning and development. The Hot Springs Zoning Code Section 16-11D6 reads, if the proposed amendments are not consistent with the future land use plan, Planning Commission shall first consider and adopt any necessary changes to the future land use plan. The portion of the property subject to the zone change request has a future land use classification of residential medium high, which is not compatible with the requested C4 commercial district. Surrounding C4 zoned properties have future land use designations of linear commercial corridor, as does the C4 portion of this property along Airport Road. The future land use designation of residential medium high would need to be changed to linear commercial corridor to give the subject property a consistent future land use classification and would be consistent with the surrounding C4 zone properties. The applicant has successfully demonstrated that the standards for favorable consideration can be met. Planning Commission is able to establish a basis for recommendation to the board that the proposed change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development. With a future land use map amendment to linear commercial corridor, the subject property would have a consistent land use designation and be consistent with the surrounding C4 zone properties. The recommendation is to recommend that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map by designating the subject property C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District because the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning and is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code, and to amend the future land use plan map by designating the subject property linear commercial corridor consistent with surrounding commercial properties, future land use plan map designations. That concludes the staff report. We also have a letter from Ann. I'll spell her last name, Mayle. This is a letter in opposition to the request. She says, do we need an infrastructure that is already in place just a half-mile away? Do we need another gas station and more banks? You each have a copy of this letter, and I would encourage you, if you have not done so already, to read it. That concludes what I have for you.
Thank you, Director. Do we have anyone signed up? Okay. So if the applicant would like to come forward now, state your name and address. Is there anything you would like to add to the record? You have a maximum of 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm Mark Rutter with Holloway Engineering, and everything that was stated is very accurate, and I appreciate your time on this. And I'll just preserve the rest of my time for comments.
Yes, please state your address.
200 Casey Drive in Maumelle, Arkansas.
Thank you very much. At this time, Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
No questions.
Okay.
I
Thank
do. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Looking at page 113 of the packet, it seems to be that you're going to be leaving some greenery towards the back end of the property.
Absolutely.
So there will be a natural tree buffer.
Yes, and we intend to incorporate vegetative bioswales to deal with storm drainage and that kind of thing. The site itself is incredibly difficult because of the slope. So we'll construct a retaining wall, et cetera, to deal with that.
It's the only question I had.
I have a question. If it is approved for us to vote to amend this, and of course you know that it has to go to the Board of Directors, this is quite a huge investment that you're undergoing. What is your time frame if it's approved?
Well, they want to move quite quickly. Obviously, the site, with the weather dependent, et cetera, will take a lot of time to develop. But I suspect it would be under 2 years.
I have a question. Traffic on Airport Road is pretty heavy, and that seems to be an issue, always a concern, and so far as public safety. Have you done any investigation of traffic counts and
No, we
expected
really
traffic
haven't,
counts?
but I
this
I
use?
envision this as being a ride-in type, ride-out type of place. Anybody that comes down Weston Road right now and attempts to make a left, they probably do alternative routes rather than to try to turn left on the airport.
It's just, in the city review, did they uncover anything like that, any traffic count or any issues on that, and any objective data that might
A
come to
traffic
play?
count was not requested by Public Works or Engineering. This is a state highway with a extra large capacity for traffic. It is intended to be a roadway that handles a commercial level of traffic. And so after their review, they did not request at this time a traffic study. It is possible that a traffic study would be required at a later date prior to building permit, but that is not a given.
So those types of things could be options later on taken by the city.
When engineering
And-
sees the
right.
site plan, they express a need to have more information regarding trips per day, or they will ask for that, yes.
Right. We do know, I think everybody's familiar with that area. There is another high-use commercial business on the same side of the street near the lake that prohibits left turns coming out
Yes.
of that side. So those are some of the kinds of issues engineering would look at.
Yes, and I would expect, as the engineer has mentioned, that we would be looking at a right-in ride-out type of access egress to the site.
Thank you.
That's right. And I anticipate that when it comes in for plan review, there will probably be some verbiage like that in the review.
But neither owners nor you all have contacted the state to see
Um,
about putting up a signal light there?
I'm sorry?
The owners have not, and you all have not contacted the state to investigate putting up a
No.
signal light there?
No. Traffic signals, as you know, are very expensive, so that would make this development
So
undoable.
the state hasn't been real cooperative about putting up signals anywhere, really?
No.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
In terms of traffic count, though, that road is the busiest in Garland County. As of 2 years ago, the last study, it is the busiest road in Garland County.
getting
Believe it or
worse.
not.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it's not enough just to say it's a wide road,
right.
but it's busy.
That's right.
If there's no other questions, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Just, okay. Thank you very much. Just to clarify, we will call those that would like to get up and speak in the order that you signed up on the sheet in the back of the room. Anybody that comes up, kind of the same progression, please state your name, your address, direct your questions towards the commissioners. We at that time can resort back to the applicant if they choose to answer. You will have 3 minutes for your presentation. And I am going to be very, very, very honest. This very first name I'm probably not going to get correct. So I'm going to say Mr. William. Will you please come up and state your name and your address? And yes, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name's William Poslowski, and I live directly across the street from the said zoning that's been presented there at 1133 Airport Road. And I have a couple pictures here if you don't, if you want, I can get them to you.
If you'll pass them on to Mr. Stoddard, he'll.
Anyway, I think y'all have hit on a few things that I heard it mentioned already. That Airport Road is already, I mean, it's a busy road, because everybody knows it's a major thoroughfare to and from across the lake. Anyway, there at that corner where this property is at, it's a very bad corner. There's a little curve in there, and it's very dangerous. There is, on one of the pictures up there, you can see the caution lights that have been up there. They haven't been turned on for a very long time. They used to be, but it didn't slow people down. But I think y'all hit on it about the state doing something about, I know that's not Hot Springs, I know that's a state highway, to do something about putting a traffic signal up there, especially if this guy wants to put in whatever kind of business he wants to put there, because this is going to make it worse. Anyway, that's about it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate your comment.
Sir, you're saying that the caution lights are inoperable?
Yes, they are. They don't work.
I don't think they've ever worked.
Yeah, they did.
Did
They
they?
did. They did one time, years ago, but they haven't been turned off for some time. But it doesn't do, the traffic's gonna flow it. I mean, if everybody's driving 60, then people are driving
Yeah.
60. That's just the way it is. You know, when you pull out there, and I don't know, y'all probably know or can find out how many accidents and how many fatalities have been there
Yeah.
over the last 5 years.
Yes, sir.
I know y'all can find that out. They ain't got nothing to do with the state. Hot Springs does that. They ain't state police that comes out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mrs. Scott. Thank you very much. Please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Susan Scott. I also live at 1133 Airport Road. There are 16 condominiums there, and I think we could safely say every one of us are it's not easy to pull out of our driveway, either direction. If the traffic is coming from the school, then You can't really even turn out right. You cannot turn out left without just saying a prayer and going. And I don't know what speed limit they're driving, but they're not slowing down. So I think our biggest concern would be a traffic light to improve an already bad situation that might get worse with more traffic.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate. Next, we have Mr. Button. Yes, sir, please state your name and your address, and sir, you have 3 minutes.
I'm Rob Button, and I live on 740 West in Beacon Manor. And I've been there about 5 years. And one of our residents got severely hit coming out of that, out of Weston Road going towards Hot Springs. It's the traffic there is terrible, and they did do a study right as I moved in there, and there was close to 36,000 cars that went by there on a daily basis. And a stoplight would be a necessity, and it would probably help a lot, and maybe even slow that traffic down enough to where people going into Bubba Brews and coming out in and out of the other condos would help us access the road going towards Hot Springs. That's all I've got to say.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you very much. At this portion, the public portion of this hearing is now closed. At this time, commissioners, this is our chance to speak amongst one another. Thoughts, concerns.
What kind of building are they putting there?
We're looking at the land use right now.
At this time, we're looking at the land use, and that could be any of the C4 land uses that are allowed in the table of uses. At this time, they are interested in putting a convenience store gas station there, but this approval does not approve that specific use. It looks at any possible use that can go in a C4 zone.
What's the procedure with the state to request a traffic signal there?
That request would have to come from, I believe, from the mayor. I'm not certain. But I do want to say one thing, and that is that you've heard the residents say that this is a situation that exists. We cannot ask someone who is developing one lot on a road that has an existing problem to correct an existing situation.
Oh, I agree.
So that request can be made. There have been, I believe, traffic studies in the past. When there is a traffic study of an intersection, there is a list of what are called warrants in the Uniform Manual of Traffic something. Yes, yes. Yes. He's absolutely correct. UMTC and P or something. And that gives you a checklist of things that have to be present at that location. Traffic count is one of them. The amount of traffic has to be not just at the peak hour, it has to be throughout the day. And that's a difficult piece of that requirement for us to grasp, because when we're there, it's typically the peak hour and it's murder driving through there. But if the rest of the day does not meet those warrant numbers, then the light is not going to be approved. There are other things involved. How close is the nearest intersection in any direction? Where are there other signalized intersections? If there's a traffic control device at every intersection, you'll still have lots of traffic, but it'll be stop and go, which, believe it or not, actually makes it worse. So in doing this analysis, there are many, many, many things that have to be considered together for that device, that traffic control device, to be approved by the state.
Okay.
It does seem like, though, that we're talking about two different things here. One, the land use, and one, the existing situation of the traffic problem in
Yeah.
airport. So,
But we have to consider them together because this is a public hearing and we've had people speak on it. So we
And-
definitely got to take their concerns
Indeed,
into,
just-
into retrospect.
just making the point that hopefully whenever plans have been made for constructing whatever is going to be on that site, that there are some additional requirements that, based on that plan, that could accommodate some of the traffic concerns. I'm sympathetic to that, but this is a request around land use.
Right, right. And when they're at the building permit stage and they present their site plan, believe me, that will be a
Yes.
big part of this.
Yeah.
Well, looking,
No.
looking at the picture that's up on the screen, if I own this parcel of land and it's laying in two different zones, it's going to make it very challenging to be able to find something that could be built there. So we're looking at residential, right? High-density residential potentially, but on basically an unbuildable portion of the lot.
The lot is very steeply sloped. It is single-family residential,
Yeah. Oh.
R3. And the site, as the developer is imagining it at this point, and again, that's not binding.
Right.
That's just a dream right now, as far as we're concerned. Uses primarily the C4 portion, and the rezoning is of little consequence to the scope of what can be developed on that corner due to the topographic nature.
He's just providing the buffer zone, basically.
Yes.
the
Right,
R.
and
That's
that's
correct.
what we have to consider is that we can't jump forward. We have to look at what we're deciding today, and that is the land use where it's currently at, unfortunately. What it can be and what it might be, we don't know. We're really just looking at that parcel piece of land at this particular time.
Right, now, we do know what's allowed in a C4, and I can't quote all of them, but I would think of, some of those uses are much higher traffic things, and while we wouldn't necessarily deny it this time because of an existing condition, I think we have to take into consideration that what the use of the land can exacerbate an existing problem. And I think we all pretty much acknowledge that issue. And so again, I don't know that we need to specifically give any direction to the city or anything in terms of that, but
Well, this got to go to the board.
but it's
anyway.
probably,
It has to go to the
it's
board.
appropriate to, I think, let it go to the board and let them, they're the ones that will have to address that
Yes.
issue.
Right, and that will be the responsibility of the city engineer and Public Works Department when a building permit application and site plan are submitted.
So how is it this oil change place is not encroaching in R3 over there?
Which oil change place?
Right,
What
right to the,
picture are we looking at?
east of it, 53,425 parcel.
It's split zoned as well.
Oh, it
It's
is?
just a smaller, I don't know
Yeah.
if you look at the screen behind you, but there's slivers along the northern part of it that are split zoned, similar to the subject piece we're discussing tonight.
So just out of curiosity, why can't he do the same thing?
He-
How is
he-
he able to do this, but he
He
is
is.
not?
He could,
Okay.
yeah.
It just really makes it cleaner, it gets it all
Yeah,
into one
yeah,
zone
I got you. I
classification.
understand, yeah.
But I was trying to display, again, I don't mean to make you keep turning really the commercial improvements are probably all completely situated on the current C4 zoning. The R3 part is this, what I'm assuming would be a sloped embankment, probably rip-wrapped or something like that. So yeah, they potentially could build their development and not even change zoning.
Commissioners, any other questions you would like to discuss? Any other comments, concerns? No, at this time, the public portion has been closed. Thank you, though. Well, okay, just thank you again, Commissioners, for taking your time. To clarify, We have a motion to approve item 3 with staff findings and recommendations. And again, it's a motion to approve. So at this time, Mr. Stoddard, will you please call the roll?
Erickson,
Approve?
Stafford,
Approve.
Greenway,
Yes.
Lamond,
Approved.
Janice, Davis,
Yes.
Walker. Approved. Ramick,
Approve.
Janet,
Approve.
Hobby.
Approved, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the director's report.
I would like to say that this item this is a recommendation to the Board of Directors. The final decision will be made by the Board of Directors, and that will be on February 21st in this room at 6 o'clock. Yes, Director's Report, thank you. Couple of things. Number one, we have, and you should have this in front of you, the extremely summarized stakeholder interview results. She has broken it down into 6 or 7 or 8 different categories: general character, zone districts, housing, lake area, uses, administration, and sidewalks. And with a note that our favorite topic, short-term rentals, is not included in this. The board has their eye on short-term rentals at all times, and those amendments, should they be required, will be done outside of this overall code revision. So please, when you get a minute, take a look at this. I hope you will see that the comments you made have been incorporated herein. And again, thank you so much for taking time to work with Christopher and Arista on this analysis of our existing code. If there's a code anywhere in North America that needs work, it's ours. So, let's keep moving forward with it, because we really, really need to improve it. Having said that, we will be putting together a development code committee to take a closer look at the recommendations that come from Camiros after these stakeholder meetings and after their analysis of the existing code itself. I think we're looking for about 3 planning commissioners who can find the time to attend probably every meeting that ever happens on this code revision. It will be time consuming. Please think about it for a minute. While I tell you that as a whole, Planning Commission will also be very much involved in this. The point of having some planning commissioners on the Development Code Committee is so that we have someone from Planning Commission who's been involved in discussions outside of Planning Commission about what's going on with the code. So if you are interested in that, we need probably about 3 of you. If there are more than 3, we will develop a highly scientific method of getting it down to 3. I'm thinking names in a hat, but if you have better science, if you have better science, I'm open to that. So is there anyone who would be available? Hillary?
I'm
Okay.
inclined to be available.
Okay, Bill?
I was gonna raise my hand, but it's already 3 people.
I want to be.
Do you?
I do.
Okay, we've
I
got
just need,
Lori, we've
like,
got Bart / Brad.
We're going to have to pull out the hat.
The hat. We're gonna have to come up. Janice? Okay.
You're gonna need a big hat, aren't you?
Maybe.
Don't tell us now,
Okay.
it'll hurt our feelings.
I'm not nimble enough.
Okay, you're out.
The code needs to be more flexible, more nimble. I'm not nimble
Okay.
enough.
Okay, well, you're not out of the action here. There's no way to escape it. If you're on Planning Commission, you're going to be involved in this. All right. I am now going to create the scientific means for making this happen.
When are these meetings slated to take place?
Most of them will be during the day. Some of them may not be. Some will be via Zoom. Some will be in person. We
You know-
don't know yet.
Ms. Selman, again, you've given a pretty good explanation, and then, again, there just may be other things. Are you expecting this committee would work from what period of time, beginning and ending a number of weeks? And then that would, I think, precede a public hearing, things where we all would be.
The answer to that is yes, but
Yeah.
we don't
Always
know
get the
those,
yes.
we don't know those timelines at this time.
Roughly,
I'd say over
We
the
know
next
that-
year.
Yeah.
I would expect that you would probably have, in a year's time, maybe 8 meetings.
okay, so you're not seeing it just as, thank you, I initially was thinking just as review the preliminary, the initial report, but then you're talking about continue to review successive versions and changes.
And,
Where you can learn the
and
measurable.
attend meetings.
Yeah.
Yep,
And attend public
yep,
meetings.
public meetings. Yep.
That'd be really nimble.
Yeah, I have to be highly nimble. All right.
I do think that, that there's probably needs to be more than 3 so we can have alternates. But I also think that if we communicate very well as a committee, that we are in very, very good shape.
So you're thinking possibly 5.
Yeah, I do.
That the science has now told us we need 5.
Wow.
What do you think?
Darn, science
You're
is
welcome.
truthful.
Okay,
Science is amazing.
we have a
Has
committee.
this been peer reviewed?
I think that's,
This
I think so. I think
system
we
that
just
we're
did.
using, this methodology
Has not
is
been peer
peer-reviewed.
reviewed?
Oh, it's
Oh.
totally peer reviewed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Yeah, we talked about it on the way up the stairs, so,
There you go.
yeah. Okay, well, this is the group.
Yeah, I might
Okay.
ask you one other thing. This is the type of subject that doesn't, I mean, again, obviously, a lot of the discussions, there can be independent discussions, phone call. These are not open meeting discussions. They're necessary.
Some will be,
Some will and some won't.
yeah.
But we're not.
But I don't believe we have to wear the cone of silence.
No, this
when
is
we're doing-
legislative.
You know, if we
Yes,
call
yes.
somebody and talk about that.
This
Yes.
is coneless.
Thank you very much.
Right,
No cones.
Very
no
important.
cone, yeah,
That's their ice cream.
yeah. Okay, so the committee members are Janice Davis, Bart Stafford,
Or Brad.
Hillary Jeanette, Bill Lamont, and Lori Erickson.
Congratulations.
That is a super group. I thank you so much. And we will pass this on to, what, the Secretary of State?
Sounds about right.
Okay,
Just don't put it in a drawer and leave it behind.
all right.
Okay, so with no further discussion, we are ready to adjourn the Planning Commission meeting, January 12th, 2023. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.